This is the MTR-X Multifunction Precision Triangle set from TSO Products, and I want to do this video because this thing is awesome. If you've been watching my channel for any given amount of time, you've probably seen this come out quite a few times, and this is the MTR-18. So this is the larger version of the MTR-X, right? So this one obviously doesn't fit in a sustainer like this one does, but they have a lot of very similar features. It's just that this is a very large square. So this one, I actually find myself grabbing a lot more simply because it has so many different uses. It's much smaller. So let me go ahead and we're going to open it up. I'm going to break down everything that it comes with, and then I'm going to walk through what each one of those things does and show you different use cases for each one of those. So let's take a look inside. We'll go through what it includes. I do want to say that it does not come with a sustainer. That is an additional purchase. However, if you have this sustainer in any color, you can actually put the foam insert in that sustainer because it does come with the foam insert. What you get when you open it up is you have the triangle itself, which is sitting right here. And then underneath is a variety of different things, but let's first talk about these two things right here. These will attach to the MTR if you wanted to use this as like a square for clamping or checking square of a machine. I'll show you different examples of each one of those. It does come with this 3mm wrench, which is used for the majority of the hardware in here. This right here is an attachment that allows you to attach it directly to a guide rail. This right here is the protractor assembly. These two knobs and these two chamfer dogs work in conjunction with that. And then right here is a small parts container, which I really like because it'll keep all these small things separate, but has some washers, different screws that you're going to need to attach different things, some different reference pins. This is the entire set, all housed in one single sustainer, which makes it, very easy to transport, move, or just store everything nice and neat. So I want to start off by talking about the protractor assembly and how all that goes together, why it's valuable, and how you use it exactly. What we want to do is we want to set this up in the table. So we're referencing these 20mm dog holes. This is really easy to set up. Actually, the first thing I want to mention is these are what are known as chamfer dogs. And these come with the MTR-X from TSO. But what these are is they're flat on one side and they have a chamfered edge. So these are exactly 20mm around. So they fit in the dog holes really, really nicely. However, the chamfer in this scenario is going to go up. And the reason for that is because on the MTR-X, around all of these edges is a small chamfer that matches that. So what that allows is when I put that chamfered edge in, it's perfectly flush, which will allow this to sit perfectly flush to the table. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So let's go ahead and put this one here. We'll go ahead and put this one here. Again, I'm going over the protractor portion. So this is the idea, right? That I can turn this and I can reference any edge and get any angle that I want for whatever reason. Next thing you need is the protractor. Then you're going to take one of the provided washers inside of the small parts container, screw that down. I'm going to take it here on the back, screw this down. And now, if I wanted to lock this at, say, 30, right, using this cursor here, I can absolutely do that. And that 30 degrees is referencing this edge. On the inside, it's a 75 degree. Why? Because we have two scales. If I set this to 45, right, like the triangle is meant to be, right, it lines up with all of my holes. If I'm referencing this edge, I can use this scale to go anywhere from 0 to 90. If I'm referencing this right here, I can use this scale. So right now it says I'm at 90. If I wanted to be at 75, then I would turn it this direction and I could utilize this face here. So pretty intuitive, pretty cool that you can do it on either side. You can actually take this out and I could reference the edge of material. So if I wanted to turn this to, we'll use 75 again, lock that down. And now I would have a 75 degree mark. It's really, really nice to be able to have that flexibility. And it's also nice that it does, have the dogs that protrude down low. And these would be fine for most applications. Now, if you were doing something with a large radius, you know, that's a little bit of a different story, but I'll show you a solution for that here in just a few minutes. Let's say that you didn't need the protractor assembly because you were only doing 90s and 45s, and you don't need to worry about all those crazy angles. What you can do is use these in your dog holes and utilize it just like that. And now you have a 90 or a 45, and it gives you something to use as a support. So that's kind of the basics of the protractor side of things. Let's show you some of the other features about this triangle. The next thing I'm going to show you is what these different pins are for. These are just referencing or indexing pins. So let me just put these in. There's a series of threaded holes. These can be used to reference, you know, a board, square something. Let's say that you had something that had a pretty drastic round over. That's where something like this would be very helpful. And you can see the difference when I flip this sideways, the difference in height. So this is going to give you a little bit more contact surface for that. What this is also great for, these taller ones, is if you're using it to square something that's in an elevated position, this extends the reference surface from the face all the way up. And you'll get to see a pretty cool example of that when I set up my crosscut station here. I'll give you an example of what it is that I'm talking about here. So now I have these reference pins in here. If I wanted to make really quick, accurate 90 and 45 degree marks, it's as simple as me butting those pins up against the material. I need to make my mark. I draw my line. If I need to make a 45, I draw my line. And now I have my layout lines, and I know that they're perfectly 90 or 45. Now again, if I wanted to make angled cuts, that's where I could use a protractor in this scenario and set it up and make, you know, whatever cut that I need to based on the project. What these are is these are going to give you the ability to clamp two pieces of material together and ensure a perfect 90. And that is where these 5mm screws come into play. Now, there is no 5mm Allen wrench as part of this set, mainly because if you have a track saw, which, you know, if you have a track saw, this is going to be really, really beneficial to you. But more than likely, there's one on board your machine, especially if you have the Festool track saw. I'm extending the surface of this again, right? I feel like that's the big thing about this tool, is that they found ways to extend the accuracy in a different direction, which is kind of cool. So let's say that I wanted to, you know, these are a side and a front for a drawer box, right? And I wanted to make sure that these things line up perfectly, make sure everything is square. What I like to do is, in this scenario, I would actually go ahead and place this vertically, and I just make sure that it's flush. And by doing it vertically like this, I know that it's going to be flush down on the bottom. And then you can just take one of your F-style clamps or whatever style clamp, tighten that down. And go ahead and take this. And then just ensure right here that it's perfectly flush. Clamp that in place. And now I know that this is a perfect 90-degree corner. So while you could use this just to check 90, it's great because you can also utilize it as a clamping element, because now if I really wanted to, if I was driving screws or shooting nails or something like that, I know that it's 90, it's keeping everything together in order for me to do that. Let me show you another use case for one of these plates. I've now given this thing a base so I can stand it up vertically. So if I tried to do it this way, it probably wouldn't stay on that much. So just a well thought out feature to have this here in the event that I wanted to check something tall, like, you know, my jointer fence here, I can do so, and I can just slide it down and check the squareness throughout. So it's basically just ensuring a nice stable platform for it to stand. Everybody has a miter gauge that comes with their table saw, and, you know, I've got a SawStop table saw, and I don't trust the scale that's on here. It's a sticker. The thing gets dropped all the time. So if I want to set this to 45 and I want to know it's 45, well, what I can do is I can take this and I can reference off of my blade and ensure that it's a perfect 45. And I've got my blade raised up just to give me the longest portion touching this, to give me the best and most accurate reading. So now if I wanted to set this to 90, I could take this and simply turn it until it comes in contact and adjust as necessary. make sure I have no light anywhere, and I can lock this down. And I know with 100% certainty that this is 90 degrees to the blade. Now this next one is pretty cool. So everybody knows that I absolutely love my TSO GRS 16 PE. This is the guide rail square. So this attaches to this and gives you a perfect 90. That's such a great product because it makes me cutting 90s very quick and easy. What's really great about this is that they actually thought of that with this MTR-X, and it gives you the same functionality, but it actually will give you a little bit more functionality. And this actually can slide into your rail, and you can now utilize this as a track square, not just a square. There's a lot of different ways that you can do this. I could put those indexing pins that I showed you guys earlier in this and actually lay this off if I just needed a perfect 90. It's fully supported on the table, which is, you know, really nice. You don't have any tipping or anything like that, but I'll go one further. You can put the protractor back on and utilize it for angles. And I'm going to show you something real quick, because right now you're like, well, it's still a 90. If I wanted to utilize, right, let's set it perfectly at 45. If I wanted to make a 45-degree cut, because these protrude below, because this is perfectly even with the bottom of the track, which means these are protruding. So if I wanted to use this and cut a 45 on my material, these dogs now become a reference for that. And now if I wanted to loosen these, I can now cut a 90. I could go anywhere from 0 all the way till, let's see where it stops. 78, 79. 79 degrees. And the reason why you get cut at 79 degrees, which I don't know why you'd ever want to go anything past that, because you could just do it a totally different way. However, I can't imagine a scenario where that is going to be an issue, right? So 0 to 45 and everything all the way up at least to 75. I have a 90-degree cut. It acts, it's nice. It's not any heavier than the other track square, right? So I can set that there. I can make my cut, lift this up, move it, get my next piece, set it down, make my cut. And again, the flexibility of the angles is a nice feature as well. One other thing that I want to highlight on this is that this is reversible. And one side, the side that I was just showing you, is meant for your, you know, Makita, your Festool, I believe PowerTech is another one that they say it's compatible with. But this side is actually designed for the Craig AccuCut system. And the reason for that is because it is a right-hand saw versus a left-hand saw, if that makes any sense, right? So you're cutting on the opposite side. The motor and the housing, the cut is happening on the opposite side of the other saws. But this will work with that because the scales are inverted to match that, which is pretty cool and well thought out. So each side does have its own purpose. I went ahead and set up what my crosscut station is, and I have a video on this whole setup if you guys want to watch that as well. Basically what I was talking about earlier with something being in an elevated position, I want to highlight something here. So my fence has to be in an elevated position because this right here is an additional support bracket when cutting a piece. If I was to not have these pins in, it would just simply slide underneath. So what this is giving me, I'm not even referencing this edge, I'm referencing these pins along this back edge because I want to ensure that this is 90. So since this is elevated, this extends that accuracy up. And that's another reason why it's really nice to have something like this, because now I can take it, I can check to see if it's 90, and I'm going to go ahead and set this up. I'm going to loosen this right now. I know this thing is dead on, and now, you know, it is no longer at 90, right? I got plenty of rock there. So I'm going to flip this around to the other side, and I'm going to set this up, dialing this thing into 90 perfectly. So my front bracket here, it's just held in by basically two knobs, but I want to get rid of that. So what I like to do is I actually like to pull the fence over, and I use that back pin as a reference because I can take my hand, put it up against that fence to make sure it doesn't rock, and then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to slide this over until that back pin touches. And once I see that both pins are touching, which they are currently, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to lock this down in place. And now I can raise this up, I can lower this back down, and I'm touching the pin on both. So now I know that my guide rail is perfectly 90, and these really made that helpful. Now I know that I will inevitably get people that talk about I didn't show if it was truly accurate, right? I just showed me setting it up. I'm going to take a much larger version of it to give me a lot more surface area to test, and it's against the fence. I slide it over. There is no gap anywhere. I'm going to use my good friend Sedge, little tip with using a Post-it note. This is how he checks his MFT. So nice and square, and I did it utilizing the raised elevated pins on the much smaller MTR-X. Now I want to have a little bit of fun with this. So I want to use this as my fence. I've taken my other fence off. I just have the track on here, and I'm going to utilize this as my stop, right? So what I'm talking about is that's going to be how I make the cuts. But I want to have some fun. So first I'm going to use it at a 45. Granted, I am setting this. I am turning it. I am turning the knobs, and we're just going to see how it goes. So in this scenario, I'm going to utilize this. I'm still using the track, but I'm going to utilize this right here as my base for my 45-degree cut. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make the cut, and then I'm going to check it with my 45-degree square, and then I'm going to do a 90-degree cut after I turn this, and we're going to check it with this square. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, this is my offcut piece. This is my Incra Guaranteed 45. I very rarely ever use this thing, but when I do need it, it's very handy. If I check this, it is perfectly 45. And I'll try to throw a picture up or something while I'm talking about this, but I mean, it's dead on, and it's referencing the 20mm dog holes. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this, going to loosen this, I'm going to turn it, and now I'm going to use this as my stop for a 90-degree cut. So let's just go ahead, still the same piece. There's my bevel. Cut a decent amount off just so I can visually show it a little bit better. All right, I've got my offcut piece here, same type of square. I'm going to go ahead and check it real quick. Again, I'll try to throw a picture up just so you guys can get a better visual representation of this. But I mean, it's 90. I have absolutely no complaints with that. It's accurate. Now, I'm sure that I'm going to get some people that are like, well, yeah, it's easy for you to check angles on small pieces and not see anything. What about over a long distance? And they're right. You know, that's a valid point, but that's not the purpose of this video. So I can tell you that I've had really, really good, accurate results with not only this, but everything that I've used from them. This product is really, really nice, and it has a multitude of uses. I'm sure that there's some that I didn't even cover in this video and that I will continue to figure out, but it really, truly is a really nice addition to their lineup of tools, and it's a really nice alternative to the larger MTR-18, even though that has even more capabilities, which I would like to do another video on that at some point. But I've really wanted to talk about this because I've gotten a lot of questions about this. Actually, another thing that I didn't mention, I was talking about checking, you know, for square on different tools. It's like the perfect size, and it's really great to check and make sure that your miter saw is actually at a 90 or a 45. You could actually use this really quick to set it up. Again, because it's small, it's low profile, but it has a really long reference edge. And that's the problem that you get into when you're trying to check square on something that has a long distance, right? This is the same argument that I just made about people saying, well, you know, you didn't cut anything really long, and I want to see how far out it is at, 5 feet. You can make the same argument for something like this. The larger the thing is and the more surface area that you have referencing the two things that you're trying to make sure are square or at 45, the better, right? Because it gives you a better representation. So using something like this on this miter saw makes more sense than using something like this, because I'm getting very, very little surface area on the tools. And that wasn't really supposed to be a part of this video, but you know, sometimes things pop into my head that people would find helpful, maybe, or not. I don't care. I'm still making the video. Anyways, get yourself a TSO MTR-X. I know I love mine, and I will continue to use it a lot, especially at my assembly table, seeing as how my assembly table is using the 20mm hole pattern. But I actually probably use this for all the other things that I talked about more than I actually use it in my table. But that's just me. So anyways, hope you guys like this video, and I'll see you next time.